One option could be giving it to him in installments, suggested one of the team members. Agreed, we could use that approach. It will not only keep us in the dictator's good graces but also motivate him to expedite our acquisition by wanting more payments. This seems like the best option, said Felix, nodding in approval. So, are we planning to inform him that for every telecommunication company we acquire, we'll be giving him $5 million in installments? By the end of the process, we would have spent a total of $30 million in bribes, including the initial $10 million we plan to offer at the meeting next week, Barry asked Felix, seeking his opinion. Yes, that should work. There are only 4 telecommunication companies in the country, Felix agreed. Now, let's discuss the approach for bringing up the matter without upsetting him. We need to be precise and careful in our wording throughout the entire meeting, Felix suggested. Agreed, Barry said, we don't want to come across as pushy or threatening. Perhaps we can start by expressing our admiration for the dictator's leadership and the strides he's made in developing the country's infrastructure. That's a good suggestion, but we need to be careful with our words. The dictator has done very little for the country, so he might think we are being sarcastic and trying to mock him, Felix cautioned against using that compliment. And thus they began to brainstorm for their approach during the meeting. While all of this was happening, Nova was monitoring their conversation through their phones and taking notes on everything that was being said. She planned to report back to Aaron once he was finished with his current task. After spending more than 4 hours collecting brain data from various households in Cambridge City communities, Aaron had finally finished all the people who were on the list. Although Aaron's brain data collection task had been going smoothly, there was one instance where he entered a household and discovered the individual he was meant to collect data from engaged in sexual activity with their spouse. As a result, he had to postpone the data collection for this particular household and move them to the end of his list. Upon returning to the household half an hour later, Aaron was surprised to find the professor still engaged in the activity. Despite feeling proud of the man's stamina, Aaron had no choice but to wait for him to finish since he was the only person remaining on the list for Aaron to collect brain data from in the Cambridge community. During that period, Nova kept him company. Sir, Felix's plan has gone successful, Nova informed Aaron about the ongoing events on Felix's side. So, when did they manage to set up a meeting with the dictator? Aaron asked Nova, curious about the schedule and how much time the team had to prepare for the meeting. They have a week to prepare, Nova replied, not only answering Aaron's question but also answering the underlying meaning behind it. Have they already come up with a plan? Aaron asked Nova, his curiosity piqued about what kind of plan Felix's team had devised. They are currently working on the plan, Nova informed him. Afterward, they continued to engage in small talk about various topics for about 20 minutes until the professor finally finished. This gave Aaron a brief window of time, during which the man's wife went to the bathroom, allowing Aaron to complete the collection of the brain data, which only took a few seconds for the initial reading. As Aaron finished collecting the brain data and was leaving the house, the professor's wife returned, drying herself off with a towel while saying, "You're not tired, are you? We have 3 more rounds to go." Passing right beside Aaron, who was holding his breath, even though he knew he was invisible to her. Honey, the professor's wife called out when she didn't receive a reply from him. What's wrong with him? He usually doesn't get tired unless he goes for a few more hours, the professor's wife wondered aloud as she covered her husband with a blanket. She noticed that he was sleeping like a baby. Aaron breathed a sigh of relief as he successfully left the house without encountering any problems. I wish you all the best, Aaron said, looking back at the house before turning to make his way back to the hotel. He knew that his driver and rental car would be waiting for him there, ready to take him back to the hotel. How many people in the UK still need their brain data collected? Aaron asked Nova as he walked back to the hotel. 754 people, Nova answered, making Aaron want to jump from a bridge when he was reminded that he needed to repeat this for a few hundred times just in the UK alone. After walking for some time, Aaron finally returned to the University Arms Hotel. That's when he realized that he had told his driver he wouldn't return until morning, so he decided to check in for the 3 hours he had to wait. After completing the check-in process, he headed to his booked room. Once inside, he took off his coat and laid down on the bed before falling asleep. Rena Rothschild Manor. Rena could be seen sitting in her workroom, engrossed in reading a document on her computer while Ava presented her findings on the decrypted and analyzed backed-up data. Rena had been listening to Ava's presentation since yesterday, as it was a lengthy one due to the extensive amount of data they had to go through. However, despite the long duration, Rena did not feel tired at all because everything she was learning from Ava was valuable. With the information she had now gained, Rena now had significant leverage over almost everyone in the family. Despite having a wealth of leverage over almost everyone in the family, Rena didn't rush to take any action. She wanted to wait until she had heard everything from Ava, knowing that if Ava had made the presentation so long, it must mean that every piece of information was crucial. So she continued to listen carefully and take notes, waiting for the right moment to make her move. As Ava presented, Rena took notes and asked questions to clarify anything that wasn't clear. Rena sat there, absorbing all the information that Ava presented, until finally, at noon. With that, you are updated on everything I considered important from the analyzed data. With those words, Ava finished her presentation. After listening to the entirety of the presentation, she decided to finally start taking action. She pressed the intercom button and called for her secretary, Chloe, who she knew was one of the only few people within the family who were clean. "Yes, miss," Chloe said after entering her office. "Call Terry, tell him I have something to talk about with him." She told his secretary to call for her head of security, the first betrayer she had to deal with. Yes, Chloe immediately left to go and call for Terry. As she waited for Terry to come, she took another look at the leverage she had of Terry to ensure that their meeting didn't go differently from how she envisioned. Terry entered Rena's office a few minutes after Chloe left to call him. "Take a seat," Rena directed Terry as she motioned towards a nearby chair, her attention still fixed on the computer screen before her. Terry complied silently, settling into the chair as directed. However, as several minutes ticked by without any communication from Rena, and with her attention still riveted on the computer screen, Terry began to feel increasingly anxious. For Terry, the situation felt like the calm before the storm, an unsettling and ominous stillness that hinted at impending chaos or turbulence. However, the uneasy silence did not last much longer. Rena abruptly rose from her seat and walked over to the printer to retrieve some papers that had just finished printing. She then went and sat down across from Terry. "All right, Terry, I've received a highly troubling report that you've been informing my brother about everything I do. What do you have to say about this?" Rena asked, her tone serious and unyielding. When Terry heard that question, his heart almost left through his mouth, but he still managed to remain calm and tried to explain himself. "Ma'am, that report is completely false. You know that I've been working for you since your high school days, so why on earth would I do something like that?" Terry protested, his tone trying but failing in conveying a sense of anger and offense at the notion that his character was being slandered. As Terry tried to act indignant, Rena couldn't help but chuckle at his display, although she still felt a lingering sense of betrayal from the day she learned that he was one of the individuals who had turned against her. The irony of Terry's feigned outrage struck her as amusing. "Ha! You really ought to take some acting classes, Terry. You're absolutely terrible at it," Rena exclaimed, unable to contain her amusement any longer. However, as memories of their past interactions flooded her mind, she found herself becoming increasingly angry at Terry's attempts to portray himself as a victim. Despite her rising anger, Rena managed to keep it under wraps, determined to see the meeting through without lashing out at Terry. She remained composed and focused, resisting the urge to slam the table in his face. "Ma'am, I think there's been a misunderstanding on your end. I wouldn't bother acting if I knew I was innocent," Terry insisted, doubling down on his earlier protestations. Terry persisted in his defense because he knew that any admission of guilt could prove fatal. It was widely regarded as taboo for a member of the Rothschild security team to betray the person they were tasked with protecting, and the consequences were severe. Anyone who did so would be made to disappear, serving as a warning to others. "Enough with the melodramatic performance, Terry. Do you really think I would base my accusations on mere speculation?" Rena's tone turned serious as she hurled the papers she had retrieved from the printer at Terry. Terry scrambled to pick up the papers that had been scattered around him, curious to see what was written on them. To his shock, he realized that they were transcripts of his conversations with her brother's secretary spanning the past 5 years. Terry was filled with fear and began to tremble as he comprehended the contents of the papers. He was perplexed as to how Rena had obtained them, since he was certain he had deleted every conversation they had after each talk. In a fit of fear and desperation, Terry lunged at Rena and began to strangle her. He acted impulsively, not thinking about the consequences of his actions or what he would do if he succeeded in killing her. Hike! Rena fought for air as Terry tightened his grip around her throat. His eyes were bloodshot, and the veins on his scalp were bulging, demonstrating the sheer amount of force he was using. His entire body shook as he continued to strangle her. As Rena was on the verge of losing consciousness, a loud bang echoed through the room. A gunshot had been fired, but she didn't have time to comprehend what had happened as she slipped into unconsciousness. Rena! Chloe, the secretary, yelled as she moved the bleeding body of Terry off of Rena's unconscious form that he had fallen on top of after being shot. Call the doctor now. Chloe shouted at Alex, the security detail who had shot Terry immediately after entering the room. Alex quickly left the room to call the family doctor stationed in the mansion as quickly as possible. Half an hour later, as Rena slowly regained consciousness, she realized that her throat was sore and she had a pounding headache. She opened her eyes to see the worried face of Chloe walking back and forth. As Rena looked around, she noticed the younger man in a suit standing nearby, his hands clasped behind his back with a serious expression on his face, indicating that he was there for security purposes. She tried to speak, but her throat was too painful to form any words and only hoarse gibberish came from her mouth. Rena attempted to clear her throat and speak once more, but the pain was unbearable. Chloe acted swiftly by bringing her a glass of water and assisting her in drinking it. Rena felt relieved as the cool water she drank soothed her throat and eased the pain. After a moment, she finally managed to utter comprehensible words. "Who is he?" Rena asked in a hoarse voice while pointing at the young man in the room. "I'm Alex, your new security detail stationed here since last week, miss," Alex explained without waiting for Chloe to answer Rena's question. "Where is Terry?" Rena asked Chloe after she finally managed to recollect herself. Chloe hesitated for a moment before answering. "He's in the hospital. He was shot by Alex and is still receiving treatment at the moment." "But how did you know I was in danger?" Rena asked, not quite believing that it was just luck. I only came in behind him after he barged inside without even knocking or saying anything to me," Chloe replied, pointing to Alex. When Chloe and Rena turned to Alex, he explained, "About 35 minutes ago, I received a text message ordering me to be on standby. Then, 10 minutes later, I received another one to come into the room as fast as I could." "Aren't you the one who sent it?" he finished with a question as he was quite confused. "Oh, yes, I did send that message. The event must have slipped my mind." After realizing that it was Ava who had sent the message as a contingency plan, she decided to take credit for it to avoid creating any suspicion. Because she had never faced any significant threats or danger within her family, she failed to prepare for any potential contingencies. This oversight caused her to overlook the potential dangers when she attempted to comfort Terry. She simply hadn't considered the possibility of something going wrong, as she had never encountered a dangerous situation before. In her mind, she believed that everything was under control. She had devised an elaborate plan to turn Terry into a reverse spy, manipulating him into providing false information about her to her brother. She thought that she had covered all of her bases, and that nothing could go wrong with her carefully crafted scheme. But fate is a bitch, and she had experienced it firsthand. "Thank you," Rena thanked Alex for saving her. "It's my duty, miss," replied Alex, giving a small bow to express his appreciation for her gratitude towards him. "What did the doctor say about my condition?" Rena asked about her condition as it was the first time for her. "After examining your condition, the doctor said that you're fine and the bruise on your neck should heal within a week," Chloe explained what the doctor had told them. Rena attempted to sit up on the sofa in her workroom, where she had been laying on in order to receive treatment. With Chloe's assistance, she was finally able to sit down on the sofa, and it was then that she noticed the blood stains on her shirt. "Can I have a new shirt?" Rena asked Chloe for new clothes. "Here." Chloe seemed like she had expected to hear that request as she had the shirt in her hands by the time Rena finished asking the question. "Okay, can I have a moment alone?" Rena requested, as she began to unbutton her shirt to change, in search of some privacy. Yes, miss, both Alex and Chloe responded, as they exited the room to provide her with some much-needed privacy and alone time. After being left alone, Rena removed her bloodied shirt and discarded it in the trash can, leaving her in a bra that hugged her ample bosom. She quickly put on the new shirt that Chloe had handed to her, and then made her way over to her computer to take a seat. As she settled into her chair, she gazed at her computer screen and murmured, "Thank you, Ava," expressing her gratitude for the assistance she had received from her. "As always, you're welcome," replied Ava calmly, feeling a sense of pride in herself for accomplishing one of the purposes for which she was created. "Time to move on to the next phase of my plan," Rena declared, determined to continue with her scheme, even though she had encountered a stumbling block right from the start. However, Ava interrupted her by locking the computer and stated, "You need to rest, Rena. I need to continue, or they will just, ha. Rena tried to explain to Ava, but she immediately broke down in panic and started gasping for air. She was having a panic attack from the memory of what had happened to her. Even though it might seem childish for her to break down, it was the first time she had ever been physically assaulted by someone, so it was a traumatic experience for her. Despite her initial decision to continue with her plan without pause, the sudden interruption by Ava locking her computer forced her to confront her trauma. This resulted in Rena breaking down in tears, as she was unable to suppress her emotions any longer. The breakdown continued for a few minutes, with Ava silently watching Rena without uttering a word. Ava understood the importance of allowing Rena to confront her emotions and provide comfort while the pain was still raw, preventing it from becoming deeply ingrained and potentially haunting her in the future. After calming down from the panic attack, Rena heard Ava's comforting words. "You have me, so you don't have to worry. I will always be there for you, watching over you and protecting you," Ava said. After hearing what Ava said, Rena felt even more calm and reassured. She realized that Ava had already kept one of her promises. "I will always protect you." It was evident that Ava had expected something like this to happen, no matter how minuscule the possibilities were, and had prepared for it. This realization gave Rena a sense of comfort, knowing that she had someone looking out for her. This in return increased her reliance on Ava, which in turn extended to Aaron, as he was the one who had created Ava to be her constant companion and protector. "But why did you call for Alex out of the many security guards?" Rena asked, curious about why Ava specifically requested for Alex's assistance. "Mother recommended him after sending her a list of people who had not betrayed us. She thoroughly examined their histories and chose him because he was deemed the most unlikely to betray you," Rena replied to her question. "If your mother chose him, then it would be wise to appoint him as the head of the security position, which has become vacant as of today. We can even use the fact that he was the one who rescued me to defend our decision to those who might question why we chose a newbie instead of someone who has been with me for a longer period of time," suggested Rena. "That's what she also suggested," Ava agreed with Rena's recommendation. "Then I'll inform them of my decision before I go to rest, as I really need to," Rena said while touching her neck, which was still hurting. "Take all the time you need to rest. The plan doesn't have a time limit," Ava responded with reassurance. "Thanks," Rena said, expressing her gratitude to Ava. She then got up from her chair and made her way to the door, to go and rest in her room. After passing by Chloe's table and informing her of her decision to promote Alex to the head of security as a reward for saving her, Rena immediately went to her room and slept. Aaron sighed. After sleeping for 3 hours, Aaron was awoken by Nova, who reminded him that the driver had already woken up and was waiting for him. Nova had seen him through the CCTV footage of the hotel after she had taken control of the hotel upon their arrival. Arg! Aaron woke up still feeling tired, regretting not using the option to enter the VR and sleep there for a longer time. Due to the time difference of 5 to 1, he could have extended his sleep in the virtual world, but he decided against it. He desired to have a few hours of sleep in the real world to reacquaint himself with the feeling, so as not to forget it. However, he knew that in actuality, there was no tangible difference between sleeping in reality and in the universal simulated VR. After cleaning himself up, Aaron gathered his belongings and left the room, making his way to the reception lobby to check out. "May I have your autograph, Please, asked the receptionist after completing the checkout process, recognizing that he was the young billionaire who had been trending on Twitter a few days ago. Sure, Aaron agreed. Despite feeling a bit weird about being recognized by someone from the other side of the world, Aaron took the paper and pen the receptionist gave him and began to sign it. When he finished, he asked, "What is your name?" so he could write it on the paper. In excitement, the receptionist replied with her name, Shamam, glad that her request was granted. Aaron began writing the name, Shamam, on the paper, followed by, "Wishing you all the best," but as he was about to hand it back to her, his phone vibrated, indicating that Nova had something to tell him. As soon as he checked his phone, he saw a text message from Nova that read, "Write down these numbers on the paper." Without any hesitation, Aaron took the pen and started writing the long sequence of numbers that Nova had displayed on his screen. After finishing writing the number sequence, Aaron smiled and handed the autographed paper back to Shamam, saying, "Nice to meet you," before turning around and leaving the hotel. "What is with those numbers?" Aaron asked Nova after he left the hotel. Nova replied playfully, "It's a gift from me to her if she can decode it. It also makes your signings quite unique." "Then she won't be able to decode it in her lifetime," Aaron said, smiling at the thought of Shamam trying to decode something created by Nova using a quantum computer. "No, I made it specially for her. She can decode it if she uses her virtual assistant and her engineering skills well," Nova replied to Aaron, indicating that she had created it specifically for Shamam to solve using her knowledge and expertise as an engineer. "She is an engineer?" Aaron asked, surprised that someone with such a profession was working as a hotel receptionist. "A very underappreciated one at that, unfortunately," Nova replied back, feeling sympathy for Shamam. Nova had taken a quick glance at Shamam's computer to know her motives and ended up seeing engineering drawings on her personal computer, which was open under the reception table, just begging for her to hack it. "If she solves it, it will solve most of her problems," Nova said in hope that she solves the message she left to her using Aaron. Aaron exited the hotel and walked to the designated meeting spot where he and the driver had agreed to meet the previous night. Upon arriving, he saw the driver waiting outside the car, engrossed in his phone. After exchanging greetings, they both boarded the car, followed by the driver asking, "Are we going back to the hotel?" He wanted to know the destination of their journey. "No, I need to go to Oxford University," Aaron stated the destination he wanted to go to. "Okay." The driver acknowledged the destination and started the car to officially begin their journey. Hospital VIP room. Terry had just come out of the operating room after undergoing a long and arduous surgery to extract the bullet that was lodged in his chest. Despite the surgery being over, he was still unconscious due to the effects of anesthesia. Outside Terry's VIP room, there were two bodyguards standing guard. Their job was to prevent people from entering the room and to stop Terry from escaping. Terry had a punishment waiting for him after he recovered from the surgery, as he had tried to injure a Rothschild. Terry's attack on Rena had sealed his fate and he had lost any chance of redemption. The Rothschild family viewed it as a significant event that required a lasting example to be made. As a result, Terry would face punishment to set an example and prevent such situations from ever happening again. The head of the family believed that a significant example needed to be made, as this was the first time such an incident had occurred in the modern history of the Rothschild family. If he wanted to kill himself, why try to do it that way? One of the bodyguards standing by the door asked the other. He considered Terry's actions to be worse than suicide and felt saddened by what was going to happen to him. He had better not wake up for a few years if he wants to keep living, the bodyguard said firmly, emphasizing the severity of Terry's situation. What do you think she said to make him try to strangle and kill her? I don't know what it is, but it must be something of great importance to him for him to risk his own life and attempt to kill Miss Rena, said one of the bodyguards, acknowledging the severity of the situation. As Aaron was en route to the esteemed Oxford University, his mobile device rang, and he answered it promptly. "Hello Felix," Aaron greeted as he picked up the call. "Hello Aaron, how are you doing?" Felix reciprocated. "How is Eden?" Aaron inquired. The atmosphere here in Eden varies greatly depending on one's location. For those of us staying in a high-end hotel, the atmosphere is rather pleasant. However, during our commute from the airport to the hotel, we couldn't help but notice that the atmosphere for others seemed quite bleak, Felix conveyed his honest impressions of Eden without sugarcoating anything. Upon hearing Felix's perception of Eden, Aaron thought to himself, not for long, before resuming his conversation with Felix. Okay, could you give me a summary of what's been decided so far regarding the plan? Aaron inquired, eager to hear about the progress made since Nova mentioned that they were discussing it a few hours earlier. That's precisely why I called you. We've arranged a meeting for next week, and we've also devised an approach to broach the topic with the dictator, with the hope that he might even assist us in our takeover. Felix updated Aaron on the latest development regarding the plan. Congratulations on accomplishing the first step of Phase 1 of the plan. Can you provide me with more details about the strategy for approaching the dictator during the meeting? Aaron inquired, wanting to know more information as Nova hasn't updated him about it yet. All right, so this is what we've devised. Felix began updating Aaron on the plan, delving into more details whenever Aaron requested clarification or expressed a desire for further information. Meanwhile, the driver quietly navigated the vehicle towards their destination, feeling nothing but contentment. He knew that the man he was driving was a generous tipper, and he would also receive payment from the hotel for the transportation service, which would be included in the guest's checkout expenses. Since the guest was still checked in and availing himself of the hotel's services, such as the car he was currently riding in, the driver's earnings continued to accumulate. An hour and a half later, Aaron finally arrived at one of the many accommodation communities of Oxford University. Upon arrival, he bid farewell to his driver and proceeded to walk into the community. After finding a secluded area, he cast a concealment rune on himself. On that day, many professors missed their classes in various campuses of the university because they were found asleep in their offices. This peculiar event would later be referred to as the Great Sleep. The next day, Rena had finally managed to recollect herself and partially heal from her trauma, so she decided to immediately continue her plan of cleaning the people near her. She walked into her office, gesturing for Chloe to follow her. Chloe said nothing and followed behind her into the office. "Where is Alex?" Rena asked, not having seen him on her way to her office. "In his new office, miss," Chloe answered. "Okay," Rena replied after hearing Chloe's response. She then walked to her chair and began tapping on her computer. She printed out a piece of paper with names on it. "Replace all of these people from this list with these," Rena said as she handed Chloe two pieces of paper. One with names of people to be removed and the other with names of people who would replace them. Upon observing the sheer quantity of individuals who were set to be eliminated from her team, Chloe inquired incredulously, "All of these?" The number was so substantial that it could not be classified as a typical downsizing. It appeared to be more akin to an act of genocide. The cuts were far-reaching, encompassing a broad range of personnel from the chefs, cleaners, and repairmen to even the security team. Virtually every category of worker employed in the household was affected. Without hesitation in her voice, Rena replied, "Yes, all of them." Rena instructed, "If anyone asks, simply state that I'm still seething with anger over the incident and needed an outlet to vent my frustration." She used the excuse of being choked during the cleaning process as a cover for the elimination of spies who had been reporting to various members of the household. Rena was not concerned about anyone connecting the dots, as she had studied the data provided by Ava. She knew that each spy reported to a different family member, and most of them were unaware of the other spy's existence. Therefore, if anyone questioned the sudden disappearance of a spy, they would assume that their own spy had simply been caught in the crossfire of Rena's outburst and nothing more. "Also tell Alex to always be within the vicinity of the office whenever I'm working," she instructed Chloe, who was on her way outside to accomplish the task she had given her. "Understood, miss." Chloe acknowledged the order before opening the door and making her way to Alex's office to relay the new instructions. She would follow this up by terminating some employees, just a routine Tuesday for her. After seeing that Chloe had left and she was left alone in the office, Ava greeted her, "Welcome back, Rena." "Thank you, Ava." Rena thanked Ava's welcome. "How are you feeling?" she asked, wanting to know where her mind is in the healing steps. "Although I'm not fully over it, I'm fine enough that I expect it to pass by the end of the month." Rena answered to her truthfully, saying everything that she felt, without trying to sugarcoat anything, as she fully trusted her. "If that's what you are feeling, then you can continue without any problem," Ava said. making her release a sigh of relief as her reply had reassured her that she was really healing and not just lying to herself. Yeah, I know, I have already sent Chloe to solve the issue of purging the spies. All we have to do is wait until next week where every spy would be replaced and we can officially say that the purge has been completed, which we can then follow by starting to use our leverage to return to our position and maybe go even higher. Congrats, Ava exclaimed, acknowledging that Rena had finally taken a significant step forward in her plan, despite facing setbacks right from the start. Thanks, by the way, did your mother send you the Morgan's plans? Rena asked, grateful for Ava's congratulations. She was curious to know if they had received the plans, and if so, she wanted to take a look at them. No, she hasn't sent them yet, Ava replied, delivering the disappointing news. The last time I inquired about it, she mentioned that the plans were at 95% completion and would take another month to finalize as the Morgans were still fine-tuning them. Don't worry about it, Ava. We still haven't even finished the second part of our plan, Rena reassured her, sensing the disappointment in Ava's voice. Afterward, they engaged in casual conversation about their plans and discussed their next steps, as Rena found herself with nothing to do at the moment. Aaron, who had completed extracting brain data from the professors at Oxford University, was en route to Imperial College London to repeat the same process of downloading brain data. In the following 2 weeks, Aaron had plans to visit several locations to complete his collection of brain data from the United Kingdom. His itinerary included Rolls-Royce facility in Derby, University College London, UCL, the University of Edinburgh, several aerospace and aviation facilities, biotechnology and life sciences institutions, and space and satellite technology centers, among many others. A week later, Monday, Felix and his team rose earlier than their typical routine, commencing their preparations for the meeting that was scheduled for the afternoon. In order to be perceived as sincere, Felix and his team had to arrive at the presidential palace at least an hour prior to the scheduled meeting time. This, coupled with the fact that the palace was quite a distance away from their hotel, meant that they had to leave early. Since everyone is present, let's proceed, Felix announced upon citing the final person who would be accompanying them. Subsequently, they departed from the hotel to where the car was waiting to transport them to the palace. Throughout the journey, they rehearsed their bullet points for the 457th time, striving to ensure that nothing went even slightly amiss. After a 3-hour car ride, they finally arrived at the gate of the presidential palace, where they were stopped. Their cars came to a halt as heavily armed guards approached. After the stop, the armed guards commenced a search of the car. The team was then instructed to open the boot, and a dog was brought in to conduct a scent inspection. The security measures were exceedingly meticulous. The team was subjected to a bomb search and their phones and other electronic devices were confiscated. Upon completion of the search, they were eventually granted permission to pass through the gate. However, their driver was replaced with a guard who would take them from that point onwards. They were guided through a labyrinth of corridors and grandiose rooms until they finally arrived at the dictator's private chambers. The dictator, Adolf, was seated at his desk, accompanied by his advisors. As Felix and his team entered the heavily decorated room, he looked up and gazed at them, attempting to act as if he didn't remember them. Nonetheless, Felix strode forward confidently, his 4 team members standing steadfastly behind him like a sturdy wall of muscle and fortitude. When Felix noticed the dictator struggling to recall where he had placed them, he realized that the leader was purposely trying to assert dominance over them. If the dictator truly had forgotten about their scheduled meeting, they would not have been granted permission to enter the palace. He was certain that the dictator had conducted a thorough background check on them prior to the arranged meeting. Nevertheless, Felix proceeded to play along with the dictator's facade and introduced himself and his associates, explaining where they had initially made contact with the leader and how they had arranged the meeting. Aha, so you're the individual who has been attempting to arrange a meeting with me since the commencement of the party, exclaimed Adolf, elevating his tone to give the impression that he had just realized who they were. Yes, Your Excellency, Felix replied confidently, bowing slightly. We are honored and grateful for the opportunity to meet with you today. Thank you for taking the time to see us, he added with a forced smile, feeling increasingly uncomfortable with the dictator's poor acting skills. He wondered silently to himself whether the dictator's assistants were hesitant to inform him about his subpar acting abilities. Very well, let's get to the matter at hand. I have several other crucial meetings to attend to, declared the dictator, underscoring the significance of his time and conveying his disinterest in the current meeting. Certainly, Your Excellency, before we commence, please allow us to express our gratitude for your agreement to meet with us, spoke Felix in a respectful tone, gesturing towards one of his team members to hand over the briefcase. The briefcase was the sole item they were permitted to bring into the office, having undergone a search to confirm that no hazardous materials were present. Upon noticing the briefcase, Adolf motioned to one of his aides with a nod, indicating for them to retrieve the briefcase and reveal its contents. The aide obeyed and retrieved the briefcase from Felix's hand, placing it on the table before opening it while ensuring it was facing towards the dictator. Adolf exhaled heavily as he laid eyes on the freedom units filling the briefcase. Despite being taken aback by the substantial amount of money before him, Adolf attempted to maintain his composure and act unaffected by the sight of the funds. Proceed, he instructed, struggling to divert his gaze from the briefcase. Of course. We require your assistance and approval for a matter, stated Felix, conveying a sense of dependence on the dictator's help as if nothing could proceed without it. Very well, let me explain, responded Felix, sensing that the dictator's ego had been inflated. The dictator raised his hand, gesturing for Felix to proceed and state the purpose of the meeting. We are interested in purchasing the telecommunication companies in Eden, stated Felix succinctly. What benefits would I gain from assisting you with this endeavor? Questioned Adolf, seeking to understand what he stood to gain from the proposal. We are prepared to pay you 50% of the amount equivalent to that in the briefcase each time we successfully acquire a company, reiterated Felix, emphasizing the generous financial compensation that would accompany the dictator's assistance. Sure, that sounds good, but why should I allow you to buy them? Adolf asked, feigning indifference to the amount of money he would be gaining, and trying to extract even more from them. After we buy and merge the companies, we plan to upgrade them with the latest technologies. This will allow us to increase prices, resulting in a larger income for us and a larger tax revenue for you, Felix explained, emphasizing the benefits for both parties. Adolf still tried to appear unimpressed by their proposal. When Felix noticed this, he decided to give the dictator another reason to consider their offer. Consolidating the telecommunications companies under our ownership would result in all data coming in and out of the country passing through our network. This would give us the ability to monitor and analyze what your citizens are thinking, which would allow you to better manage and govern the country, Felix explained. When he heard the last point, he immediately opened his mouth to agree to their offer as it had everything he needed, money, control, and more, without having to spend any of the country's money, which he considered his. They were even paying him. But just as he was about to express his agreement, he was interrupted by one of his aides. What is it? He asked, seeming quite annoyed by the interruption. The aide moved closer to him and whispered in his ear, reporting what he needed to say. When Adolf heard what his aide was saying, his eyes lit up with excitement at the beauty of the idea. I agree to your proposal, Adolf, the dictator, finally said, much to Felix's relief. However, his relief was short-lived as the dictator continued with a condition, but I have one condition. I will receive 50% of the profits from the merged company. Is that agreeable to you? Felix found himself at a loss for words and could only manage to utter, Your Excellency. When Adolf saw the expression on Felix's face, he decided to further elaborate, I will be receiving half of your profits, and in return, I will be providing you with protection from any problems that may arise during your stay. Do you now see the need for me to receive half of my share? Felix quickly regained his composure after being taken aback by Adolf's greed. He replied, before we can agree to that, we need to consult with our company's leadership to see if they can agree to the last condition. He was trying to stall for time so that he and his team could report the latest condition to Aaron. Adolf nodded and got up from his chair, speaking in a stern tone. Very well, he said, make sure you give me your decision by the end of the week or I will consider the deal to be cancelled. Felix smiled in response and replied, we will get back to you within the week with our decision, Your Excellency. Following that, they were escorted out of the presidential palace by the same security guards who had accompanied them upon their arrival. After reaching the entrance gate, they were picked up by their car with the security member as the driver. They were then given back their electronic devices and other belongings that had been collected from them earlier. After that, the security driver returned their car to their regular driver. They then left the palace vicinity and headed back to the hotel to rest and report back to Aaron about the dictator's last condition. In the office of the dictator. Did my last condition seem excessive? Adolf asked the aide who had given him the idea. The aide responded without revealing that it was his idea, as Adolf liked to see himself as a wise man. No, Your Excellency, your demand was quite reasonable given the protection you will provide them. It is their failure to realize your generosity for not asking for more of what you deserve. I hope they come to understand it soon, he flattered him, knowing that he enjoyed being praised. Yeah, they are the ones who don't know, Adolf replied to his aide while stroking the dollars in the still open briefcase and salivating at them. On the same Monday, after spending the majority of the week on the road, Aaron had successfully gathered all the necessary brain data from individuals on his list located in the United Kingdom. His exhaustive efforts have finally come to fruition. Subsequently, Aaron proceeded to the Icon Hotel where he had only stayed for about 4 hours but only used their rental car services to check out before heading to the airport for his next destination. Upon departing from the presidential suite at the Icon Hotel, Aaron generously rewarded his driver with a tip of $20,000 for chauffeuring him across the entire country throughout the week. Afterwards, he boarded the private jet that was waiting for him to travel from London to Paris, and then utilized a combination of trains and car rentals to travel to the location of CERN. This was necessary as many of the individuals on his list were located there, and he needed to collect their brain data. However, Aaron didn't just head straight to CERN, as Nova had arranged his journey to ensure that he had collected brain data from individuals throughout the entirety of France before arriving at his final destination. On the same Monday, Rena Rothschild's mansion. By Friday, Chloe had successfully terminated and replaced all the members on the list, resulting in significant commotion within the private network. Today, on Monday, Rena finally decided to embark on her journey back to the top. In her office, Rena could be seen sitting in front of her computer having a discussion with Ava about the steps they would need to take for her to regain power. Now that we have successfully completed the purge, let us begin our return, said Rena. Yes, Rena reached for her phone to contact a member of the company's board, but in reality, these individuals were all relatives with ties to the Rothschild family. So, it could be said that she was actually making a call to a family member. Hello, came the voice from the other end of the line after picking up the phone. Hello, Hebel, Rena greeted the family member on the other end of the line with a hint of exhaustion in her voice, as if she had been through a lot. Why did you call? Hebel asked from the other end, showing his curiosity about the reason for Rena's call. Hebel had a feeling that Rena might be getting desperate and calling for help to return to her position within the family. This boosted his ego, as he was a member of the family who couldn't compete for the head position. Therefore, having a family member who could compete for the head position beg him for help in desperation would be quite fulfilling. Are you available at the moment? Rena asked in a voice that conveyed a sense of desperation, suggesting that she had been pushed to her limits. Although I'm busy, I can spare about 15 minutes for you, Hebel replied, feeling a sense of ecstasy for having the upper hand in the conversation. Can I come and see you for a talk? I have something important to ask you. Sure, I'll be waiting for you at my mansion, Hebel agreed to the meeting, feeling a sense of satisfaction from Rena's apparent desperation. Okay, I'll be there in 10 minutes, Rena replied, but her voice suddenly changed halfway through the sentence, forcing Ava to quickly take over and use a voice modulator, to ensure that Hebel didn't realize that the entire situation was just an act on her part. Despite having fun with the situation, Rena wanted to maintain the illusion of desperation and keep up the act to achieve her desired outcome. I'll be waiting for you then, Hebel said before ending the call, wanting to assert his dominance in the situation. Rena on the other side was laughing her ass off after recalling the excitement and sense of superiority in Hebel's voice on the other end of the line. Rena, you almost blew up your act, Ava scolded her jokingly, as she too was enjoying the act they had put on for Hebel. As a wise man once said, if you have to do something, you might as well have fun doing it, Sun Tzu. Anyway, let's go. We have a meeting to attend, Rena said as she grabbed her phone and tablet, preparing to leave her office. Alex and Chloe, follow me. We have a meeting with someone in 10 minutes, Rena instructed as she walked past Chloe's desk, leading the way while the others followed closely behind. Where are we going, miss? Chloe asked as she walked alongside Rena, heading outside the mansion. We're going to Hebel's residence, Rena said as she climbed into the car that Alex had brought around for them. Once they were all in the car, they began to make their way to Hebel's mansion, which was located inside their expansive compound. The family compound was so vast that they had paved roads connecting the various mansions, making it easier for vehicles to move around. Due to the large size of the family compound, each member had their own mansion. However, since it was not feasible to build all the mansions in the same location, they were constructed far apart from each other. This necessitated the use of cars to travel from one mansion to another within the compound. As they rode in the car, Chloe couldn't help but express her concern to Rena. Miss, why are we going to his house? You know he'll just belittle you if you ask for his help, she said in a worried tone. Meanwhile, Alex remained focused on driving. You don't have to worry about that, Chloe. I have something that will make him humble, Rena reassured her in a confident tone, as Alex continued driving without saying a word. Okay, Chloe replied, trusting Rena's judgment and not pressing for further details. The journey continued in silence for a few more minutes until they arrived at the porte-cochere of Hebel's mansion. The car came to a stop and they got out, where they were greeted by a servant who immediately led them to Hebel's office. After navigating through the ostentatiously decorated mansion that gave off a sense of insecurity, they finally reached Hebel's office. The maid knocked on the door to announce their arrival. Enter, Hebel said in response to the maid's knock. You can go in now, the maid said, opening the door for Rena and her secretary to enter. Rena entered the room, followed by Chloe, but she stopped her and said, I will be having a private meeting with him. You wait for me here. Rena looked at both Chloe and Alex as she spoke. Upon hearing Rena's statement, Hebel's assumption was confirmed, and he became even more convinced that she was there to plead for his assistance, which only inflated his ego further. After instructing Chloe and Alex to wait outside, Rena entered Hebel's office and closed the door behind her before taking a seat. After Rena took a seat, Hebel remained focused on his computer screen, giving no indication that he considered Rena's presence to be more important than his current task. Rena remained silent, allowing Hebel to continue feeding his own ego. She knew that the higher he rose, the harder he would fall. After carrying on with his act of working for over 15 minutes and observing that Rena had remained silent throughout, Hebel finally decided to acknowledge her presence, feeling that he had fulfilled his desire for asserting dominance. So, he stood up from his desk and walked over to sit in front of Rena, finally ready to hear her reason for coming to him. Rena stared directly into Hebel's eyes and remarked, You appear to have grown quite arrogant, making me wait for 15 minutes before attending to me. To Hebel, Rena's words seemed to be her final attempt at regaining her lost confidence. What can I say, I have something to do unlike you, so, I can't just be available all the time, Hebel said, while crossing his legs and showing that he was feeling quite comfortable and her words did nothing to him. Okay, go ahead and tell me, what can I help you with? He said, after seeing Rena remain silent in response to his retort. I want you to give me your allegiance instead of my brother, Rena immediately stated her purpose for coming. When Hebel heard what she said, he started laughing at the absurdity of what the bitch said. Are you serious? Being choked by Terry seems to have broken a blood vessel in your brain, and on top of that, the reports of you firing nearly all of your employees in a fit of rage. Are you sure you're okay? Hebel said mockingly while still laughing. Rena said nothing and just remained calm during the entirety of the ordeal. When Hebel saw that Rena remained quiet and serious throughout his entire mocking barrage, he finally decided to ask. Why should I do that? For you, a bird who lost her wings, of all people, why? Hebel asked in a degrading manner. A bird who lost her wings. Rena repeated Hebel's statement in a questioning tone, as if she wasn't quite sure what Hebel meant despite knowing what he meant. What else should I call you? He jeered, a jobless bum, a has-been, a washed-up failure? Hebel continued to list off insults to berate Rena, relishing the opportunity to finally express his true feelings towards her and taking pleasure in doing it. Despite Hebel's continued verbal assault, Rena simply picked up the tablet she had brought and opened it, paying no heed to his insults. Afterward, she opened a picture on the tablet and slid it towards Hebel, who was still in the midst of his verbal onslaught. The sudden movement caught his attention, causing him to pause and take a look at what was on the screen. As Hebel picked up the tablet, his eyes widened in shock as he saw the image displayed on the screen. In an instant, all the pleasure and satisfaction he had been feeling just moments before vanished, replaced by a sudden sense of fear and unease. As Hebel progressed through the pictures, his apprehension grew with each passing moment. Each subsequent image revealed something that he knew to be true, something that he had kept hidden and did not want anyone else to know about. With each slide, Hebel's fear and anxiety deepened, reaching a point where he could no longer handle it. He removed his leg from on top of the other, an indication of his discomfort and distress. Hebel Pov, I have been doing exceptionally well for a while now, but this particular moment surpasses all of my previous successes combined, thought Hebel as he continued to verbally berate Rena. Look at this bitch's desperateness. I'm berating her and she just takes it like a beaten dog with its tail between its legs. I can't wait to see the look on her face when I tell her I won't be helping her after all her desperate pleading. It's really satisfying to watch her suffer like this. Hebel's mind was consumed with a feeling of superiority as he observed Rena's apparent desperation and her lack of response to his insults. But based on what I know about her, she's not the kind of person who would take my insults quietly. It's clear that she's that desperate. Wait, why is she picking up her tablet? Hebel's thoughts immediately turned to Rena's actions as she picked up the tablet she had brought with her into his office. Anyway, it's not important enough to make me stop berating her, as I'm enjoying it quite a bit. Hebel couldn't help but wonder, why is she sliding the tablet to me? Is there something she wants me to see? His curiosity got the best of him, causing him to momentarily pause his verbal assault and reach for the tablet to see what Rena had in store for him. Fuck, Hebel cursed inwardly as soon as he saw the first picture on the tablet. I'm fucked, Hebel thought to himself as he glanced at the second picture. We are fucked, Hebel thought to himself as he laid his eyes on the third picture. Everyone is fucked, thought Hebel as he saw the fourth picture on the tablet. Who would have thought that Hebel and a few Rothschilds are cucks? Rena said in an amused tone, completely different from the desperate tone she had on the phone earlier. Where did you get them? Hebel asked, his hands were trembling with fear. You don't have to worry about that. Let's hear you mock me a little more, Rena said mockingly to Hebel, who had just been mocking her a few seconds earlier. This is fake. This can't be real. You must have fabricated this to trick me, didn't you? Hebel shouted and asked in denial, desperately searching for any reasonable explanation to the images he saw on the tablet. Upon hearing Hebel's weak attempt to deny the truth, Rena simply replied, keep swiping on the tablet, and you'll see for yourself whether it's real or not. Upon hearing Rena's confident words, Hebel's fear intensified, but he reluctantly followed her instructions and continued swiping through the pictures on the tablet. As he continued swiping through the tablet, Hebel's fear grew with each passing image until he came across a video that he remembered recording. You like that big dick, huh? Asked the man in the video, while he was fucking Hebel's wife. Yes, I like it, said Hebel's wife in a voice filled with ecstasy and orgasmic afterglow. Tell it to your husband, said the man in the video, while grabbing Hebel's wife by the throat from the front like a hook and pulling it up, causing her to arch her back and look at the camera or specifically the man behind it. Then, she said, I like his big DK, while maintaining eye contact throughout the moment, following which Hebel's wife fell back down and began shaking from having another orgasm. Hebel, who was watching the video, couldn't handle it anymore and quickly swiped to the next one on the tablet. Hebel quickly slid past several more videos of his wife with other men, not wanting to dwell on the videos. He continued to do so until he came across one that made his heart sink. It was a cuckold orgy involving few members of the Rothschild family and their partners, including their bulls. Their wives were being lifted and FK'd by other men, while they, the husbands, were sitting on chairs across the room, recording and stroking themselves as they seemed to be quite aroused by the scene unfolding in front of them. There were no more videos on the tablet, but Rena had additional ones that she chose not to reveal. What do you want? Hebel asked, realizing that he couldn't use his excuse of it being fabricated anymore in front of such irrefutable evidence. I already told you what I want when you first asked, so I won't repeat it again, Rena said, looking at Hebel with a smile on her face. Okay, you have my allegiance. Is that the end? Hebel said with a tone of reluctance and unwillingness to comply. Not like that. Say it with sincerity in your voice, as if you were begging me for it, and do it while you're on your knees, Rena instructed, shifting her sitting position to a more relaxed one and crossing one leg over the other to assert her dominance. When Hebel heard the words, he almost chose the option to commit suicide rather than obeying Rena's command. However, Rena added to her statement shortly after, seeing his expression. When the family head finds out that you're risking tarnishing the Rothschild gene by having your wives fucked by men who are not approved by the family, what do you think he'll do? Personally, I don't care about what you do behind closed doors, but I believe the family head will kill your wives and make an example out of you all, Rena threatened in a stern tone. When Hebel heard this, he finally broke down and went down on his knees, crawling towards Rena. He loved his wife deeply and knew that the family head, despite being inactive for a few years, would return and take drastic measures to punish him, his wife and the others. The thought of his wife being brutally killed in front of him to set an example for their actions terrified him. I swear on my wife's life that I will give my allegiance to you and never betray you for as long as you keep my secret, Hebel said, putting his head on the floor and speaking in a groveling voice that showed complete submissiveness. He had accepted his defeat and knew that there was no way out of the situation. Now, that is how you swear your allegiance, Rena said as she placed her foot on Hebel's head while he remained bowed, awaiting her command to lift his head. When is the next board meeting? Rena asked, despite already knowing the answer as Ava had informed her about it after intercepting the news from the private network. She continued to move her leg, squishing Hebel's head beneath her foot. There will be a board meeting next month to approve one of your brother's proposals, Hebel said, his head remaining on the ground while being stepped on by Rena. Good. Who else was involved in the cuckold orgy and other similar activities? Rena asked, testing Hebel's loyalty and submissiveness to her. It was Yoel, Yoram, Uriah. Hebel started listing the names of people in the last video he watched. He knew that Rena already knew who they were from just the video footage. After he mentioned them, he started listing other names of people who had attended other orgies that they had arranged. He didn't want to be the only one who was being threatened. Looks like you have really accepted your fate, Rena said, realizing that he had mentioned all the people she knew about and had evidence that they were involved in the orgies. While she knew all of them, she had only shown Hebel one video to test his submissiveness in this specific moment. When Hebel heard her say that, he let out a sigh of relief for having mentioned all of them. Otherwise, he would have been in trouble for not mentioning them. The realization made Hebel even more fearful of Rena than he already was. It meant that Rena likely had even more evidence against him than what she had already shown, and based on his actions, cuckoldry might be the least of his problems if his assumption was true. I shouldn't attempt to go against her unless I am confident that I can escape unharmed, Hebel realized. However, to him this seemed like an impossible task since Rena could have a backup plan in which, if he failed to stop its release, it would send all of the information to anyone she deemed powerful enough to use it against him as leverage or even the family head for worse. Hebel's assumption was correct, but he was wrong about where the backup data was stored. Once Ava finished decrypting the data, she immediately sent it to her mother. She had finally found a way to send a large amount of data without raising suspicion by initiating it on the day when the private network was due for an update. This ensured that no one would be suspicious of the increased electrical usage and other observable parameters out of her control, as they would assume that the network was just using the resources to upgrade itself. Nova received the data and analyzed Rena and Ava's plan, making some improvements by using her computing power to optimize the plan for each individual based on their personality profile created from the analyzed data. This ensured that if Rena used the plan, every member she targeted would be threatened in the most effective way possible, using their fears just enough to make them swear their allegiance to her and not choose to go down together. Rena followed Nova's advice and used the threat of cuckoldry to intimidate Hebel, as Nova had determined that it would be the most effective tactic for him. Nova's analysis showed that this threat would cause Hebel to fear the unknown and unspecified damaging evidence that Rena possessed but had not revealed yet, and would be more likely to maintain his loyalty without her having to reveal any further evidence. Wait for additional instructions regarding the upcoming board meeting, Rena informed Hebel before getting up and heading towards the door to exit the office. Of course, I will wait for your instructions, miss, Hebel responded respectfully, raising his head which had remained bowed since he pledged his allegiance to her. Rena smiled upon hearing his response, but she didn't turn back to show it to him. Instead, she continued walking towards the door, opened it, and left without glancing back at Hebel even once. Let's leave, we're finished here, Rena said to Chloe and Alex, who were waiting for her outside the office. Yes, miss, Chloe replied obediently, and started walking behind her. Alex also followed them silently, without saying a word. After getting into the car, Alex began driving them back to Rena's mansion. Did the meeting go well? Chloe inquired about the meeting's success upon noticing Rena's neutral expression, which usually signaled deep contemplation about something. It went extremely well, to say the least, Rena answered without giving any further explanation, prompting Chloe to refrain from asking any further questions and allowing Rena to continue her thoughts. Rena's POV. I can't believe it worked, holy shit, Rena thought to herself, but she maintained her calm exterior in front of Chloe, but on the inside, she was freaking the shit out of herself. The reason being that despite having Nova's plan since last week, she didn't use it during her talk with Terry that almost resulted in her neck being broken. Instead, she had used the plans she came up with Ava. But during today's meeting, she had followed Nova's plan precisely, except for a few of her improvisations. Rena's anxiety stemmed not from the success of Nova's plan or the fact that it was a plan created by an AI, but rather from the realization that Aaron was the one who had developed the AI with such advanced capabilities. The way she saw it now, Aaron was an otherworldly being who should not be trifled with. This realization resulted in Rena making a solemn oath to never betray him under any circumstances. This didn't imply that she had planned to betray him before, but rather it heightened her sense of loyalty to him far beyond that of her own family. In fact, she was now prepared to betray her family before even considering betraying Aaron. What plans does he have to gain by helping me with all of these resources? Rena was questioning the motives behind Aaron's immense support for her. She couldn't help but wonder what he had in mind, as the resources he was providing her with must have been significant. Rena speculated that Aaron had to be gaining something equally or even more valuable than what he was investing in her. She began to think about what she or her family possessed that would justify the enormous resources he was investing, especially given that he had a powerful AI at his disposal. She concluded that the reason behind Aaron's massive investment in her and her family could only be their political power and connections. However, she hesitated to consider money as a factor because she suspected that Aaron, or someone on his behalf, was responsible for the person causing chaos in the stock market through anonymous financial firms, earning huge returns for several months. This left only their political power and connections as the possible reasons for Aaron's investment. Coming to that conclusion didn't solve the mystery, but instead raised more questions. What was Aaron planning that required their extensive political power or connections? The focus was on the extensive part, as if he needed only a small political connection, he could have gone to smaller families that had them, instead of investing his resources in her. Rena's mind was flooded with questions, and she couldn't stop wondering what Aaron's true intentions were. Why did he need their extensive political power and connections in such a short period of time? If he had enough time, he could have formed his own powerful connections and established a more concentrated political power. His AI was capable of predicting election results and even destroying competitors by releasing reputation-breaking scandals. Rena's thoughts were spiraling as she pondered the purpose of Aaron's investment in her. For every question she answered, more questions arose, and this cycle continued throughout the journey. Her view of Aaron was gradually rising to the point where it was becoming absurd. Miss, we have arrived, Chloe interrupted Rena's thought frenzy, informing her that they had arrived at their mansion. Thanks, said Rena as she got out of the car and entered her mansion. She went straight to her bedroom to rest, calm down and maybe even rub one, as the overwhelming thoughts and emotions she was experiencing could cause her brain to shut down from excitement and happiness if not properly vented. France. As Aaron was heading towards École Normale Supérieure University as he had some brain data from there, he received a phone call from Felix. Hello, he greeted upon answering the call. "How are you doing?" asked Felix upon hearing Aaron's voice. "I'm doing good, how about you guys?" Aaron asked in response. "We are doing very well," Felix replied. "How did the meeting go?" Aaron finally asked the question he had been curious about. Nova could have informed him about it, but she had left him to focus on driving, knowing that Felix would update him. "Well, the meeting could be considered to have gone well," replied Felix. "Why'd I hear a tone that suggests an if is coming?" Aaron asked after noticing a hint of uncertainty in Felix's response. "You're not wrong about that. Here's what happened." Felix began recounting everything that had occurred, from their first encounter with the dictator to their departure from the presidential palace. "What are your thoughts on the proposal?" Aaron asked Felix after hearing the entire story. "I think Adolf is being greedy. After seeing that we are capable of dropping millions just due to him agreeing to the meeting, he probably thinks that we are desperate and will agree to his needs without any opposition," Felix explained, sharing his understanding of dictators' thinking. Aaron asked, "Do you think he will actually cancel the agreement if we refuse his terms?" "Yes, from the data you sent us, it stated he has a very big ego. As trying to counteroffer might appear as if we are belittling his help and might result in catastrophic consequences," explained Felix. "Okay, give me 10 minutes to think about it before I return to you with my decision," Aaron said. "Sure," Felix acknowledged and ended the call. The moment the call ended, Aaron immediately pulled over to the side of the road and parked the rental car. Following that, he retrieved the virtual headgear and moved to the backseat. He put it on and logged into the virtual world, where he would have 50 minutes to consider his decision, compared to the limited 10 minutes he had in the real world. Inside the simulated universe, Aaron quickly turned to Nova and asked for her opinion on how to handle the dictator's demand, saying, "What do you suggest?" "I don't see any difference in agreeing to the condition or not doing so," Nova said nonchalantly as she materialized chairs and a table for them to sit on during the remainder of their conversation. "What do you mean?" Aaron asked curiously as he sat on one of the chairs that Nova had materialized for them. "How long do you think it will take to buy and combine the companies into a unified operation?" Nova asked, as she conjured a teapot and cups, poured tea into them, and pushed one towards Aaron to drink. "About 3 months at the earliest," Aaron answered after taking a sip of the delicious tea. Nova took a sip of the tea before asking, "After the completion of the company acquisitions, how long do you think it will take for the revolution to be complete?" Aaron quickly responded, "The earliest would be 6 months and the latest would be 9 months, as he searched for any connection between Nova's question and her opinion that the dictator's demand didn't matter. "Aha!" Aaron exclaimed, finally realizing where Nova was leading him with her cryptic questioning instead of just answering him. "You seem to have finally grasped the point I was trying to make," Nova said to Aaron with a content smile on her face, feeling proud of her master. A weird thing nonetheless. Aaron finished his tea and promptly logged off, only to realize that merely a minute had passed in the physical world. Leaving behind a blushing Nova, looking at Aaron's empty cup, Aaron quickly made a call to Felix to inform him of his decision. "Hello," Felix answered immediately, indicating that he had been waiting for Aaron's call. "Agree to his condition," Aaron said straightforwardly without any beating around the bush. "Yes," said Felix in a surprise. "Yes, but under the condition that the payments are done annually in company time, meaning that the annual payments will start counting from the official start of the company's operations after consolidation is complete." He stooped to take a breath. Then he continued, "If they ask why, tell them it will take that long for the company to finally start making stable profits." "Okay, I will wait a few days before informing them of your decision," Felix said. He didn't ask any further questions as he was sure that Aaron, who had even investigated the dictator's personality, had a plan for this too. "Sure, see you," Aaron said goodbye to Felix and ended the call after receiving his acknowledgement. Following that, he immediately started the car and drove towards the university to collect his brain data. As soon as Felix ended the call with Aaron, he turned to his team members and informed them of Aaron's decision to agree to the dictator's demand. However, there was a condition attached to it. The payments would be made annually, and the counting would start after the company completed consolidation. The reason given was that this would be the optimal time for the company to start generating stable profits. Upon hearing Aaron's decision, they were surprised that he had agreed to such an absurd condition. However, they understood that they had to follow orders. Okay, let's dismiss for now and reconvene for a meeting tomorrow, Felix instructed his team members, signaling the end of the discussion. The members left the meeting room and went about their own ways, heading back to their respective hotel facilities to rest. After everyone had left, Felix finally stood up and retired to his room to rest. He was feeling exhausted and stressed from the meeting, and sleep was the only thing on his mind. Tuesday. Rena woke up early this morning as she had gone to bed earlier than usual the previous night. After cleaning herself, she went to her workroom to begin the second day of her raising from the ashes. "Welcome, Rena," greeted Ava as Rena entered her workroom and sat down in front of her computer. "Thanks, Ava," Rena replied gratefully. "Will you start right away or will you wait for a bit before you begin?" Ava asked, curious about Rena's plans for the day. "Yes, I will start immediately. We still have around 15 board members left that we need to threaten and gain their allegiance," Rena replied as she picked up the same tablet she had used the day before. She didn't have to upload anything onto it as Ava handled all the data transfer of important threat materials. Following which she left her office at once. After seeing Rena leave her office with the same tablet as yesterday, Chloe knew not to wait for any further orders and followed behind her, together with Alex. "This time, where are we headed?" Chloe asked, making sure that Alex knew the destination so he could drive them there. "We are going to several places. First to Yoel's, then to Yoram's, and after that to Uriah's. I will let you know the next ones as we go," Rena instructed Alex on where to drive. After hearing the destinations, Alex didn't hesitate and immediately started driving Rena to the first location, Yoel's. Today Rena had planned on first receiving the Cuckold Orgy team's pledges of allegiance before moving to other board members. She needs to complete the task of receiving all the board members' allegiance by the end of next week if she wants to have enough time to go over her instructions about what to do at the board meeting. While Rena was on her way to receive Yoel's allegiances, nestled deep within the sprawling Rothschild compound, there stood a magnificent mansion that caught the attention of anyone who passed by. It was the envy of all who laid eyes on it, a true marvel of architecture and design. The mansion was the second largest within the estate, overshadowed only by the infamous family head's personal residence. Its grandeur and opulence were unrivaled, a testament to the wealth and power of the Rothschild family. The exterior was adorned with intricate carvings and decorative accents, while the interior boasted luxurious furnishings, priceless artwork, and state-of-the-art amenities. The mansion's lush gardens and expansive grounds added to its allure, providing a tranquil oasis within the bustling compound. It was Aria's mansion, the next family head's mansion. Inside Aria Rothschild's, Rena's brother, mansion. "Sir, it seems that your sister is trying to make a comeback to power," Charlotte, Aria's secretary, reported to him. "What is she doing now?" Aria asked Charlotte, wanting more details about Rena's actions. "Yesterday she went to Hebel and seemed to have begged him for his support," Charlotte gave Aria more details. "Did he agree to support her?" Aria asked, intrigued by the outcome of his sister's begging. "Unfortunately, the bug we planted had run out of battery during the conversation as he was berating her, but according to our spy's report, he had denied her request shortly after the berating. She seemed to be trying to conceal her emotions as she left his mansion." "Okay, that's good. But why am I hearing about this just now, when it happened yesterday?" Aria asked, curious about the delay in receiving news about his sister's actions. "As I had informed you last week, Rena fired nearly half of the workers in her house in a fit of anger after being choked by Terry. Among the fired people were our spies too, resulting in us receiving this news only from the side of spies in the house of Hebel," explained Charlotte about what caused the delay. "So what has my sister done?" Aria asked Charlotte for further information on Rena's actions after being denied support by Hebel. After the meeting, she simply returned home and did not visit any of the other board members' residences. "Keep me updated on her. It's quite satisfying to see her struggle, even after being defeated multiple times," Aria said to Charlotte. "Yes, sir," Charlotte acknowledged the order and left Aria alone to continue his work. After Charlotte left him alone in his office, Aria rubbed his chin, contemplating what his sister could possibly be planning by begging the board members for help, even though she knew they were loyal to him. Although he had suspected that maybe she had a plan when she fired the workers and was just hiding her act of cleaning the spies, but when he heard that she had gone and begged someone that she knew was extremely loyal to him, it seems that he had overestimated her, which was nothing but good news to him. Arya knew that the family head was watching everything unfolding despite his inaction throughout the ordeal of sibling wars for power. Just when I thought you couldn't go any lower, you seem to have a knack for exceeding my expectations, dear sister, Arya muttered to himself before bursting into laughter. Thursday. Felix had made a conscious decision to postpone taking action until the deadline set by the dictator had nearly expired and only one day remained to make contact with them. Hello, Your Excellency, Felix greeted as soon as he was informed that the phone was in Adolf's possession. Did you call to inform me that you've accepted my offer? Adolf cut to the chase, not interested in small talk and wanting to make the most of his time. Yes, after discussing the matter, the headquarters decided to accept your proposal, Felix stated. Good. Then come tomorrow with the contract so we can sign it, Adolf said, his voice filled with a hint of excitement and joy. But the main headquarters has given us some conditions that need to be included in the contract for agreeing to your terms, Your Highness, Felix said, waiting for Adolf's excited voice to subside before adding his own input. What are the conditions? Go ahead and state them, Adolf said, but this time his tone held no hint of happiness at all. They've requested that the dividends be paid annually, starting from the day when the company officially begins operations after the merger, as a condition for agreeing to your terms, Felix stated, relaying the conditions as requested. Why start counting from that day? And why annually instead of quarterly? Adolf asked in a displeased tone, clearly not happy with the conditions presented. According to them, it'll take that long for the company to start generating stable income, thus making it possible for dividends to be paid, Felix explained, trying to shed light on the reasoning behind the headquarters' condition regarding dividend payments. Okay, then, the dictator replied after a brief pause, taking a moment to confer with one of his assistants who was also listening in on the call. All right, then, I'll be sending you the contract shortly for your review, Felix replied. Send it over. I'll have my legal team review it, and we'll get in touch with you if there are any changes we need to make, Adolf said in a tone that implied he was doing them a favor. See you soon, Your Highness, Felix began to say, but the call was abruptly ended by Adolf before he could finish his farewell. Rena Rothschild's mansion. Rena had finally secured the oath of loyalty from all the members by leveraging evidence of their cuckoldry against them. This meant that Rena had gained the support of 6 out of the 16 board members that had already sworn their allegiance to her. Today, Rena was officially starting to visit the remaining board members who had not been involved in the cuckoldry bullshit, the normal ones. Miss, are you feeling okay? Chloe asked Rena as they drove towards the mansion of the 7th board member. What do you mean by that? What I meant was, are you feeling well? You have been visiting different board members for the entirety of the week and it must be exhausting, Chloe clarified her question. Ah, I see what you mean. I'm planning something and I need their help, hence the visit. Rena explained her reasoning without revealing any more details about her plan. She didn't reveal her plan to Chloe, not because she didn't trust her, but because she knew that the fewer people who knew, the lower the risk of it leaking would be. After Rena explained her reason for the visit, the rest of the journey continued in silence. Friday. Felix and his team of 3 arrived at the palace for the contract signing, and were swiftly escorted to the dictator's office by the security team. When they arrived, they greeted Adolf and shook hands, however, this time was different. Adolf didn't immediately start talking about the main topic and instead engaged in small talk with Felix, as if he was trying to hide his excitement and anxiety about signing the contract with them. Your Excellency, is there anything else you would like to negotiate in the contract? Felix asked, redirecting the conversation back to the contract. Nothing. I'm very satisfied with the conditions, and there's nothing I want to negotiate in it, Adolf replied promptly. May we proceed with the signing, Your Excellency, if it is not an inconvenience for you? Felix asked politely, trying not to appear as if he was rushing the dictator to sign the contract. Sure, let's proceed with that, Adolf agreed to Felix's suggestion. Afterward, they immediately moved to the chairs where 2 copies of the negotiated contract were sitting on both sides for them to sign and keep 1 copy each. After sitting down, Felix discreetly reviewed the contract to ensure that there had been no tampering, without showing any sign of suspicion or distrust towards the dictator and his team, as he did not want to create any tension before the contract was signed. After ensuring that everything was in order, Felix signed the contract without delay. Aaron had given him the authority to do so, and he didn't want to waste any time in getting the deal done. After Felix finished signing the contract, he exchanged copies with the dictator and Adolf also wrote his signature on it, officially ending the first part of Phase 1 in Aaron's plan. After they finished signing the contracts, they shook hands and each person took a copy of the contract with them. While they were shaking hands, Adolf turned to Felix and said, "Since we have already signed the contract, I have decided to help expedite your acquisition of the telecommunications companies." "How will you help us?" Felix asked, curious to know in what way Adolf would assist them with their acquisition. "Next week, I will send an invitation letter to the owners of the telecommunication companies for a private dinner. I will tell them that I have something important to discuss, and when they attend, you can present your offer to them. If they agree, great. If they don't, then I will invite them to be one of the first people to be accommodated in our soon-to-be-opened gulag," Adolf said with a creepy smile on his face. After hearing what Adolf said, Felix forced himself to smile despite feeling uneasy. He replied, "I would be very grateful for your help, Your Highness. It's nothing to worry about. The sooner your company begins operation, the sooner I will receive my dividends. So, rather than saying I'm helping you, I'm just expediting my dividends," Adolf said before smiling. "That's fine by me," Felix replied, feeling surprised at Adolf's blunt and honest statement. After the conversation, Felix and his team said their goodbyes and left the palace promptly. They knew they needed to come up with a fair and convincing price for the telecommunication companies. It was important to ensure that the owners would sell willingly, instead of being forced to sell by the dictator. If they were forced, they might agree to sell and then sabotage the company as soon as they escaped the country. The team had a lot of work to do to make sure the acquisition would go smoothly. Aaron could be seen riding a train heading to the Max Planck Institute for Human Development after successfully collecting brain data from the staff at the Max Planck Institute for Molecular Genetics. He had flown from France to Berlin after finishing the brain data collection of the people at CERN and most of France. As there were only 5 more stops until his destination, Aaron received a phone call from Felix. As soon as they exchanged greetings, Felix informed Aaron about the contract signing and the dictator's plan to help expedite the acquisition of the telecommunication companies. Aaron was slightly surprised to hear about the dictator's involvement but was also pleased with the progress. Aaron smiled and commented, "It looks like he's eager to receive his dividends as soon as possible." "Yeah, it appears that his advisors came up with the plan after I informed them about our condition yesterday," Felix replied. "In any case, the sooner we complete the acquisition, the better off we'll be," Felix remarked. "Yes, I agree," Felix replied. "Take care," Aaron said, bidding farewell to Felix. "All right, take care," Felix replied before they hung up. Aaron then proceeded to stand up and move towards the train door, as he had arrived at his destination. After getting off the train, Aaron quickly put his phone on his ear and said, "Inform Alexander that we have completed the first part of Phase 1 of the plan. We need to keep him informed, or else he may start to suspect that we are not moving fast enough to fulfill our end of the bargain." "I will inform him, sir," Nova replied, and promptly sent the ordered message to Alexander, as she was currently monitoring him from his computer's front camera without his knowledge, to ensure he didn't do anything foolish like reporting their deal to anyone.